Today's guest did not start as a founder. He joined an agency as an employee, then grew into leadership, then became a partner.
We're not trying to make somebody feel a way. We're trying to build a relationship and be a long-term value partner.
Now, he runs multiple agencies under one brand. But what makes this story interesting is not just about growth. It's the shift from being on the team to being responsible for the team.
It's not about vanity or things like that. It's more about confidence and just trying to be who you want to be and the best version of yourself.
In this episode, we'll talk about what changed when he stepped into leadership, what scaling review about culture, and how he builds a strong team in a fully remote environment. Chris Fink, welcome to the Agency Culture Conversations.
Thanks, Wesley. Really excited to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise, yeah, I think it's going to be a great episode. For everyone who's listening, would you mind give us a bit of introductions about yourself, your story? I would love to hear more about how do you get to where you are?
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is the digital marketing agency is probably my third career. So I had a full career in automotive management. So I worked at dealerships, and after 23 years, I exited that and wound up in operating a med spa. And so I was a practice manager there, and we were involved in building it, starting and scaling it. During that time, I wound up building our website and doing SEO and just learning those things, just trying to figure it out. And when I exited from the med spa space, I was really fascinated and just kind of in love with the whole digital marketing element. So I really wanted to chase that. About the same time, Fanet reached out to me. They were looking for what we call a strategist or account managers, pretty similar. And they had asked me if I was looking for a position doing that. And I was very interested. So I wound up hiring in as a strategist and working in that. And for over the course of the next couple of years, as I got to know the team and the agency, and they got to know me, and just the conversations started to evolve about leadership. And they were like, hey, would you be interested in resuming a leadership track? And it got my attention. And so short time later, I wound up investing and now I'm a partner. Also operate, pretty much as the COO, the integrator, titles are less important to me than, the role, but pretty much driving the boots on the ground efforts, on the day-to-day basis. And so it's been quite a journey, but it's fantastic. I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a transition, I would say, going from a dealership to work at a med spa and now running a marketing agency.
Yes.
So you actually did not start the company. You joined it, right? And then you grew into the leadership role and now actually being one of the owners as well. That's a very different path than most founders, I would say, because most of them just started as the entrepreneur. So at what point do you realize you were no longer, part of the team? When would that switch happening, in your hand? All right, I have that skill set to become a leader.
Yeah, I think I knew that I had leadership skill sets because I had been in management, executive management in the past. So that part of it, I didn't know if I was, you never know if you're really good at it. You think you're good at it. I think as the shift happened, Keith and Neil, two brothers, they were the original founders. And as I got to spend more time with them and understand how they view developing people, and I was the poster boy for that process. I was a person that they just hired to fill a role and perform a function within the company. And they got to help nurture me into a position where now I'm a partner, I'm operating at a leadership level again. And I think now that I'm there, I do have to remind myself, I don't get to complain in public anymore. I don't get to roll my eyes in Slack calls or process frustration publicly. Things kind of change when your words carry more weight, and leadership to all of us, to any leader. It means that you understand and acknowledge that you set the tone even on your bad days. So I think what I realized that I had fully transitioned was that I valued clarity over comfort. And we think of clarity and accountability as kindness and as actually being invested in our people. And so when I fully embraced that, I think I was in a much better place, and I realized, yep, this is the chair I'm in now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I actually want to deep dive into that a little bit. So from that transition going from, team member to being a leader, right? What skill do you have to unlearn? What was one thing that you kind of saw as an employee, and when you come to the leadership role, you kind of oh man, this is something I have to change. So you mentioned clarity, which is one. Was there anything else that you realized that you need to unlearn?
From the unlearn, sure. I think it was more learning about how to transition and shift and lead my team
Mm,
that had been a part of. And the jokes land a little differently when you're in leadership. And, but what I think I had to unlearn was in this model, when I joined, we had really great people. We
mm,
had a ton of vision, a ton of heart, a ton of effort. And I had to unlearn letting those be the guiding lights and get
mm,
structure in place.
mm,
And I saw great people working hard, but without structure. So
mm,
I had to learn how to let go of the free flow and
mm,
systematize and get the systems in place so that accountability is clear. The roles
mm.
were really clearly defined. Everybody has, exactly what's expected. And I think very early, even before I was in leadership, I was like, if I ever have
Mm,
influence here in this organization, like the structural elements are the things that I think actually create freedom. And so getting into that, and I think
mm.
my background helped with all those things, like the automotive,
Yeah.
I learned like metrics and how to establish good benchmarks. In the med spa, I learned a lot about execution. Digital marketing, I learned more about leverage and how to apply it.
Yeah.
We also operate like on an EOS platform. So that kind of
Mm.
helped inform my vocabulary and my language for discipline and structure. Yeah, I would say it was learning how to let go of some of those other things and leaning into some of the newer things.
Fair enough. And I think one thing I want to deep dive into is the conversation between vision and the clarity, vision and clarity. When you were an employee, did you have all this vision, like I know what I'm gonna do, I know these are the things I want to change, or did that becomes clarity as you go?
I think it was a process. We always include. So one thing we ask our team to do is not come to us with a problem without coming
Yeah.
to a couple potential solutions. And we like them to be part of the solution, but we also love it when they surface the problem. And that was true with me too. So everybody in leadership at that time welcomed me saying, hey, this doesn't seem like it works well.
Mm,
Can we make a shift? And they're like, yeah, talk about your ideas. What are your plans for it? And then I would present those, and then we'd either adopt one or, disqualify them and move them forward. So I think as we get through clarity, I think it was easy from the beginning. Like the team really just
mm,
kind of embraced that and just said, like, if you got new ideas, bring them forward. And some places and some environments that can feel like a waste of time
mm.
because then you could have 1,000 ideas bombarding you every day.
Yeah.
But when you give the constraints of, if you see an opportunity or a gap in our processes where we're not executing or delivering at the highest possible level, then bring that up. And then with it, bring your solutions that you researched and you have a plan for. And when you bring those, like, we want to know what's the impact, what's the cost associated in terms of time or labor or tools or whatever, and what's
Yeah.
the impact that we're going to bring as a result of that. And those conversations never get old.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very important point as well. I think most founders, especially the one who are just starting out, they view themselves as somebody who need to solve all the problem. They don't encourage the team members to like bring the solutions, or as a matter of fact, like bring suggestions in general, right? So it becomes like a workplace culture where people just bring problems and just problem them into the founder, right? They don't have the time, the bandwidth to focus on the things that matter, right?
There's on that, I have a number of roles that we've created as we've expanded and scaled. And
Mm,
one of the things that I tell them is their job is not to be a hero.
mm,
They don't have to do it all.
mm,
I don't have to do it all. They don't have to come in and solve what the job actually, when they're seeing success, is when they make the outcome almost boring. It's
mm,
so well systematized that when you start this process, the SOP, and that if you do this, a very predictable outcome. And
mm.
so you don't have to go in and do these superhuman things where I have to fix everything and I have to be the one. I would
Yeah.
rather not be the one. I want to be the person that's getting the ones talking to each other and
Yeah.
communicating, and all of us pulling on the oars in the boat in the same direction with the
Mhm.
same force. And if I can do that, we are going to sail further faster.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And that keeps things more organized, right? Like you don't want to be in a situation where you just have to put out fire like every single day. Like you want to have like a systematic way, like policies on like things like this is what you need to do when certain things happen, right?
Yeah.
How important is it for somebody to essentially they're not relying on leadership to provide the solutions. And I asked that question because a lot of people, they wait for the opportunity, right? They wait for the opportunity for like leadership role to open, but there are not a lot of go-getters, right? So I want to see if there's like a connection, like in those.
Yeah, what we've experienced is we look for character.
Mm,
We want to hire based on character. We can teach skills. If they're the
mm,
right character and the people that want to learn and they are problem identifiers and problem solvers,
yeah,
then they're people that we want on our boat. And
yeah,
so we're thinking about the people that we have versus what we can train.
yeah,
When it comes to go-getters and finding those people, it does get to be tricky, but we always kind of operate with the sense of value first. So we're going to try to bring value to our conversation. We're going to try to bring value to our clients, to each other when we engage.
yeah,
And if we do that and we're not thinking about like, how do I go after this promotion? The
mm,
positions are there. The paths have been laid out. Like
mm,
we can scale, and we can lay all those things out for people. And we explain to them the path that we have in mind. And then we talk to them regularly about making sure it's the right one for them. But if they come to it value first, that gets noticed. If we are very attentive to our people and we pay attention, we have conversations, regular touch points. And if we stay that well informed and they feel comfortable, one reason that people don't bring things back up as surface of those problems is trust. They don't trust that leadership is going to take that message and hear them, or not steal the idea and take all the glory, or not give them repercussions or call them, like subpar for even like not just doing what they're told. And if your entire team doesn't have that trust in the next level and their direct line, then you're never going to get the best that you can from them. But when they do trust you to take it, and you can also have a relationship where you can give the feedback and say, "Hey, Wesley, those are some great ideas. It's not the right time for it. I did give it some thought. We need to get a couple other things in place, but let's include that in the long-term roadmap solving this problem. It's a great problem. I'm glad you brought it up. These particular solutions might not work right now. Really value you taking the time to bring it forward." And you can tell them no and have them happy to hear it. But if you tell them like, "What are you thinking bringing that conversation into my office? Or what are you doing in my office?"
yeah.
Then you're never going to have a team that trusts you, and you're never going to get the best results from them. And they're never going to feel valued and fulfilled.
I like that. I really like that. So it's like a two sides of the spectrums, right? Like you need to be in an environment that you're comfortable sharing all these ideas. And in the other hand, you have to be able to be comfortable yourself sharing those ideas to get recognized by leadership, right?
Yeah. And when
Right.
they share those ideas, we know.
Mm,
And we pay
yeah,
attention. We talk about everybody on the team, very
I like
often.
that.
So yeah, it's important. And when they have that trust, and then also I can trust them to take my feedback and not get all wounded by it. Right. Like
Yeah.
if I were to say that, I'd be like, "Hey, Wes, great idea, great problem you surface. Not the time to
Mm,
fix it. I have a couple other things on the priority map that I have to address that would predicate how we approach this." Well, if you were just like, "Oh, I can't believe he told me no," well, if you're that
yeah.
character, then it is still tough for that two sides of that relationship to evolve. But if you can take that accountability and feedback and we create that conversation, that relationship where we can just be honest with each other, and that's when we can be productive.
Like that. I want to change the subject a little bit. And I think this is kind of fun in this. One thing I was kind of curious for this episode, was it difficult going from, working with a team member to now leading them? Right? How was that transition, from being like a teammate to now like, hey, I am your direct report. What is that like for you?
It does change things a little bit. I'm still close with the team, but there is some loss of social comforts.
Mm,
You can't be, and it's tough to be the same relaxation level one of the team, and also be the one holding them accountable to the standards of their role. So there has to be a little bit of balance there. There was a little bit of a segue. That said, we everybody in leadership here, we talk to our people regularly. I want to know what's going on with their dog, with their kids, with the new house they just bought. And we stay really, really involved. And it's intentional, not intentional in the sense that it's planned or schematic. It's more that we're just really invested in our people. And we really like everybody on my team. And I understand that not everybody on the team has a long-term role with us. There are times when I have to let them go and position them for success in another channel. But if I can be part of their story, and I can't know that story unless we're talking regularly and we're hearing those things. So while there was a little bit of disconnect and the frequency that I talk to them has diminished a little bit as I, focus on other things. So I just have to make the most out of the time that I do get with them and make sure that I don't lose touch and that I still, schedule regular touch points. Uh, with a mature team, it's not as hard, with a team that already knows that you're invested in their success. They know why we value those conversations. When they know why we value those conversations, that we actually care, and we're not just talking about culture, then they understand and they move with the times with us.
Did you notice, was there any sort of like, I don't know, like jealousies or envy, like folks who maybe has been like in the role before you were, and now all of a sudden you get the promotion and not them?
I didn't have much of that at that time as I was transitioning. We had a situation, we really believe like some of the things that we hear, and they sound common, or like everybody says it. Well, it's because they work, right? So like the hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
And we have a really slow, methodical hiring process. We did have a team member recently that was not a good culture fit for us and thought that he should be running the company from the day he joined.
Wow.
And there was a lot to that, and I just don't think that that person was ever able to actually understand their true value and how they can serve our clients and serve the team. They just had the wrong things tied to it, in my opinion. And so it wasn't a good fit. But as far as the rest of the team that was established, no, I didn't really run into that much. I could see where it could happen, but
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
fortunate in that way.
And I think it's actually very important. Actually, I want to deep dive a little bit into that. I ask because I also run my own agencies, and we do have a couple of team members who are recently getting promoted into leadership role as well.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them for somebody who went from an employee to a leader, and now they have to perhaps, like have that difficult conversation with the team member that like, hey, I think the culture is outgrowing you. You either need to step it up or we might need to look into different options. Like, what would you advise them to do?
I think the priority stack that I would place there would be learn to stop protecting people from discomfort. You can't protect against that. If they're accountable to a certain outcome and they're your direct report, then you have to have that conversation and you have to surface it. If they're not achieving the number or they're not achieving, the role, the accountabilities, then you have to surface it and talk about it. Doesn't mean that you have to be mean or angry or, nasty or super authoritative, but you have to let go of things like that. And you also, I think early leadership as they get promoted, leaders tend to over explain their decisions to the direct reports.
Yeah.
While explaining in clarity and sharing that vision and making sure that it's understood, there's a place to stop.
Yeah.
And you're learning where that line is. And then lastly, as much as we love and care for everybody on our team, I don't have a need. It's not a requirement of my role to be liked. It is a requirement of my role to see the best outcome for our clients and for our team and for our business. And some people will disagree with me in time. It happens. And normally we take it as a very positive conversation. Like, this is great. We love dialogue and somebody play advocate with us. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And ultimately, sometimes there are some people that as they move into that leadership role, they discover it's not a good fit for them. And we try to create a path for them forward that puts them into either developing them where they can be comfortable, or shifting the direction that they're leaning into and maybe reposition them. And sometimes that means that we have to help them find another path entirely that leads outside of us, but it's better for them.
Yeah.
And if somebody's getting promoted because they've, put in the time and they brought the value and they deserve to move forward on the, the career path, but it's not with us, maybe because it's just not the right fit for us, that's okay. If we can help them grow and they take that growth somewhere else to be successful, we still win. Like we were
Yeah.
part of that story and we helped that person turn into what they're capable of being. So we still view that as a win.
Mm. What's your opinion on creating a role specifically for somebody, right? Let's say you could look at A's player, he's like a superstar, and then for like, let's say they become leader and you realize they're not fit for leadership a role. Would you prioritize like creating a new role for them? Or yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
No,
Mm.
no, we are very intentional about our roles and responsibilities
Mm.
and our org charts, and the positions that we have.
Mm.
If there is a need for a new position as things evolve, like for example, now 5 years ago, nobody needed an AI department, right?
Yeah.
Now we kind of do, right? So we
Yeah.
need somebody in that role understanding the tools and systems. So the need surfaces the role, the person
Mm.
does not. If we have a person in one role and they just don't want to do it anymore, and we have done it in the past,
Mm.
where we were like, oh, okay, well, we'll create a new position for them, and it never works,
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is the role that we have available, and if they're like, well, what about it? Okay, so you're not going to create a new role for me? No.
Mm.
Well, what about if I did that other role? Then we go right back to that people analyzer. Are they the right person for that role? Or is it that they just don't want to do the job that they have anymore, or the role that they have anymore? Is it just that they want change?
Mm.
And wanting change is a natural thing. And we understand and encourage that. But if we don't have the place to put them into, the role is there because there's a need for that role within our business. And that person is the right person to do it. They get the job, they want the job, they have the capacity to do the job. If those things are in place, then we would make a move and consider, transitioning there. But otherwise, we avoid that.
Yeah, I think that's a pitfall that a lot of founders get into, right? They want to be liked, like you mentioned, like they want to have that relationship with the person, and they try to keep that person around, and they're trying to create a role that is not needed for the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, because they value the people, and people will sometimes develop institutional knowledge.
Mm.
And so you're thinking like, gosh, they bring a lot of value to us, but in the way that they bring value to us, now they're asking to transition to a place where there'll be some, associated value, but it's not the same. And yeah, it usually ends poorly.
Mm. Yeah. So you're not running just one agency. You're running several sister agencies under one roof. So that obviously adds layers and complexity. But how do you keep, the culture tight between different organizations?
Great question. Yeah. So we have a number of agencies all within Fanit, but I would say that we operate as a platform and we house the niche agencies under one roof, like our hardscapers and, different industries and personalities. And externally, yes, those are different, but internally, no. Internally, our processes, our values, our structure, our accountability expectations, all of those things stay consistent across the agencies. So brand personality can differ, but our standards have to be consistent. So we don't try to build multiple cultures. We're very intentional about avoiding that. We build one operating system, and the culture is a part of that operating system. But yeah, we don't change that and nuance it according to brand messaging.
I like that. What are some of your, I guess, like non-negotiable standards when it comes to like team culture?
I think just living our core values, really. So we expect our people to be leaders. And so leadership, meaning you surface the problems, you bring things forward proactively. We also expect honesty. And this is something that we're really mindful of. Every business will say, oh, it's important. Honesty is important. And of course it is. But we are mindful of intentional dishonesty versus unintentional dishonesty. You could go in and present a report to a client that is not false, but maybe doesn't surface all the facts, right? Those lies by omission type things, right?
Yeah.
It could be that you just naturally don't get to it, maybe even subconsciously. and you're not really thinking about it. And so you're kind of spinning the data when you do that. And
Yeah.
we're looking for like we live in the data, facts over feelings. And, we're not trying to make somebody feel a way. We're trying to build a relationship and be a long-term value partner. And all of our team have to support that. If they are thinking about how to spin things, it's probably not a good long-term fit because there's always an individual agenda that doesn't serve our client at play.
Right.
Also, just interaction and involvement with the team. We have our regular touch points and we expect everybody there, aside from vacations, things like that. But, we expect participation and engagement in conversation, and we don't really want people just living in silos. And that's important when you're a 100% remote because it's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's really easy. Like nobody's watching you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I don't worry about the time that you clock. I worry about the outcome and the roles being fulfilled and the processes being fulfilled at a high level of quality on time. And if those things are done, I stress less about the rest, but engagement and being part of the solution for the rest of the team. Everybody shows up every day and they're just like, how can I be part of the solution? I've got the right team.
Yeah. I like that. And what's funny? Because earlier you mentioned that you're trying to get people out of the comfort zone, right? You're trying to force people to be uncomfortable in general. So let's say if you have an employee who are super introverted, right? And they just don't have that communications. They just don't want, but they're just uncomfortable being a part of the team. Like, how would you get them to be outside the shell?
I think it's a transitional effect. So some people, not everybody's good being on camera. Not everybody's comfortable with voice calls, right? Like one of my sons, he won't even call for a haircut if he can't text it in, he doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't want to do that. Some people don't like texting. Some people don't, but we have to find the channel in which we can encourage those communications and start to draw them out. When people are quiet or reserved is usually more of a sign of lack of comfort with your team and the trust, again, that you can speak your mind and not be ridiculed or felt bad or, or anything like that. Like your input is valuable. Yeah. So at the beginning, it might be more Slack messages and an off-camera meeting, and then you get a voice huddle going, and then you evolve it. And if you understand, now one thing that we do is we usually do a couple different assessments when we're looking at bringing a new team member on, including things like DISC and Colby, and we look at those different methods. We're trying to see if that helps us understand, do we have the right person for this role? If you're an introvert and I make you an account manager or a strategist, I just did both of us a disservice. An introvert should not be in that role. I should have somebody that's engaging and influential, probably like a higher DI on the DISC system, comfortable talking and being on camera because you're building a relationship. You can't do that operating behind a wall of systems and never talking to somebody.
Yeah.
But if you're an SEO and you're just working on the technical elements, you don't need to talk that very often. Based on those roles, we just set up good communication channels and touch points where we try to foster that trust building period where people get comfortable with the team. They get comfortable speaking. They realize they're talking to their people. This is their tribe. And it gets easier to talk to, and we see the communications start to blossom a little bit after that.
That's a huge takeaway. And I think that's something that a lot of hiring managers or even like founders kind of have the vibe that they need to know the person they're bringing on, their personality traits, right? But I don't think a lot of people actually consider that's going to affect the type of role that they are doing. Yeah.
Yeah. The character assessments for us are really a great indicator. Like we have guidelines for each role that we're looking for. We look for certain things because we've seen those people that have those traits or that mix of traits typically be successful. There's always going to be outliers, but that at least gives us a better than fighting chance that we're putting the right person into the right role.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I also love the fact that you mentioned, like we eventually like ease people into the role as well. If somebody was not, like super outgoing, you ease them by, sort of the Slack message to maybe eventually like a Slack hurdle. But I think from the other spectrum, they have to understand this is needed for the role as well. Like they have to want it to. It can be just like a one-sided thing because from the other end, it's going to be like, why are they making me do other stuff? Yeah.
You bring up a really good point there. We don't
Yeah.
have too many of those conflicts anymore where we hire
Yeah.
somebody for the position. They're like, oh, wait, I didn't understand how to do that. Of course,
Yeah.
in our history, it's happened and we learned from some of those,
Yeah.
scenarios. But when we hire, like, we are really thorough about the interview process. And in fact, everybody that's a client facing role for the last couple of years, they meet with 3 partners before and often our head of delivery as well. We make sure like you understand exactly what this role entails, that you're on meetings. When you're on meetings with clients, your camera is on. That's a non-negotiable. Like we expect those relationship things. We're really transparent about that and make sure that they know what they're signing up for. And then we have a really thorough onboarding and training process. And we don't really release new team members into the field in less than 30 days. There's been a couple exceptions with somebody that like has so much experience that they don't need the time. They consume all of our training faster.
Yeah.
But we have a really thorough training system, and that helps them ramp up and not feel like, okay, it's day one. I'm going to drop you in the middle of the Atlantic and tell you to swim home, with a toothpick for a paddle. Like, we want to set them up for success. And so we spend a lot of time building a lot of systems that will enable them to have that information, be really well informed about the expectations and how to do it and how to do it our way.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Most like founder, they don't ask questions about like to gauge whether or not the person's a culture fit during the interview process. Right. I love to mention that. Do you have any advice for hiring managers or even founders out there who are perhaps looking to add additional to their teams? What are some of the interview tips that you can give them, or even like during the onboarding process as well?
Yeah. As far as interviewing, we have seen a lot of success with hiring the right people by having multiple leaders within our business speak to the applicants. And if they're downstream a little bit and they don't have client engagement, then it might be a different set of people meeting. It might be that, like the SEO program manager and the head of delivery, but having multiple people and having conversations.
Yeah.
We go less into, we do talk about your skill set. Like, tell me about, your experience with this. How comfortable are you with this tool? Those things happen. But we also just try to have conversations and learn about them as people. And kind of like what we were talking about earlier in one of our previous conversations, we were talking about just like getting in a flow state and relaxing.
Yeah.
Right? And talking about things. So we do want to know everybody. We want to know about their journey, what brought them here, where they want to go. Can we be part of that? Can we help them accomplish those goals? And when we start talking about those things, people usually tend to drop their guard a little bit and they'll tell us about their family and how their kids, have travel games. And it's really frustrating because they didn't want to do that, but their, his wife or her husband said the kids should. And, like when you let people start telling you about their life, then they start telling you more about how they're going to serve within the role.
I like that.
And do those personality assessments. They are valuable. If you do just a little bit of research, you can come up with some really common characteristics of any one of the profiles, right? It could be your genius. It could be the DISC or the Colby or any of them. The Smith test, like all of them. All of them have value in this process. Even if you just lean on one and you're just like, hey, for this role, like for an account manager, I usually like high DIs, right? Surfacing the problem, they're getting things done, they're pushing the team, and they're also really engaging and comfortable with clients. For an SEO, maybe I need more S and C on the DISC, right? Logging in on time, getting things done, making sure that they're done at quality, consistent, steady, conscientious. They don't need to be charming. They need to be effective in that way. So when you get those kind of templates and then you're like, okay, I need to fill this role. Also having a really clear ad for your people that spells out your roles and responsibilities. We keep an R&R document on every position and it'll evolve over time, of course, but we'll make little adjustments when we go do a new hiring cycle. But having that spelled out and being really transparent with it up front allows you to have a conversation with them like, so you understand, this is our expectation. And they can't ever come back and say, oh, well, I didn't realize the job didn't mean that. course you did. You signed a roles and responsibility agreement that had it all spelled out. So you combine all of those little different tactics together, and you're a lot closer to having a really solid hiring, and
Mm.
talent acquisition system.
I like that. I like that. I want to ask you a fun question. So
Yeah.
you went from working at a car dealership to a med boy and now running a remote agency, right? What are some of the, I guess, like interesting cultural difference that you see across different like industries? So, for example, maybe at the car dealership, there was just a bunch of like high testosterone guys, which is always outgoing and, trying to sell cars. Like, what are some of the interesting things that you see across different industries?
Yeah, I think, well, the car guys, yeah, they're great. Very high charisma, high
Mm,
energy personalities. Also a lot of emotional.
mm,
Salespeople by nature are really high emotional.
mm,
That's how they connect, by working with that emotion. But that means that there's highs and lows and a lot of inconsistencies and drama. You have somebody have a really good month and then they have a terrible month, and you're constantly trying to manage through that.
yep.
And it's a lot of high pressure too. Like at the
Mm,
beginning of the month, everybody's kind of tired. And then you
yeah.
start to get in your zone. At the end of the month, you're frantic and frazzled trying to hit your numbers.
Mm,
And so super high pressure at the end. And you need people in that environment that can live in any one of those pressure systems,
mm,
comfortably. When I moved to the med spa, the medical side of things was a really big learning curve for me, like understanding like how serious that is, and the programs, the programmatics, like compliance and all the things that go around that are
mm,
really important. And that, but also it has a lot of aesthetics and artistry to it. And it's not about vanity or things like that. It's more about confidence and just trying to be who you want to be and the best version of yourself, and enabling those patients to achieve that.
yeah.
Operating with that, you have a lot of type A's and a lot of very critical artistic eyes. And so
Mm,
managing to those was a little bit of a challenge. In the
yeah.
med spa or in the digital marketing world, especially being fully remote,
Mm,
it's a mix of everybody. We have so many different positions. We have people that manage PPC accounts and SEMs. We have SEOs that work on search optimization. We have the strategist team and the client relations team, and then operations. So all kinds of different personalities, all in kind of the same mix, and all of them have a role and a place and belong here. Managing the remote, I think, is just being more mindful and intentional about your communications and having those group connects, and making sure. One thing that I implemented a long time ago was what we called an all hands meeting. And we just had our annual one here, which is we get everybody on the call. No exceptions, no excuses. We're all there. And part of the reason for that call is it's like an hour. I think this one was an hour and a half. We have a little bit of fun. We gave out some awards. We gave some prizes, little energy resets during the meeting to keep, so people weren't getting zoned out. But it also propagates the mission consistently, the vision and the mission, and like where we're going, why we're going there, who we want to go there with. And everybody hears the same thing instead of playing the telephone game,
mm,
right? In a lot of businesses, you have the visionary, right? Or the leader, or the CEO, or the founder, or the entrepreneur. And he's like, hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to go do this. And then he talks to his operations team, and they're like, okay, we can do that, but we need to do it like this. We just need to make these couple things to make it, work. Okay, great. And then it goes down to the production team and they hear a different message. And then you get somebody that's in another silo and they hear from the visionary or that first person. And now you have different understandings of where you're going across the entire organization. That creates operational chaos. That's something that I'm really committed to reducing. So getting that clarity comes from saying the same thing to everybody with zero chance of hearing it a different way or misinterpreting.
Yeah, I like that. I'm curious, how do you get people to not just being a yes person? Like how do you get people to like, hey, like if I was a founder, I'm gonna tell them like, hey, this is my vision. I want this executed. You don't want people to just be like, okay, cool, I'll do it, right? Like, how do you get people to like give you like objections in general?
Lead them with objections. Yeah. So a lot of times it's just dialogue. It's just dialogue. If people say like, yeah, that sounds great. So one way to surface this is to bring out kind of a ridiculous idea, just in a conversation privately. privately, not in a group. And so it could be like, hey, Wesley, I think we should just entirely turn our entire team over to make them all AI agents. Like we don't need humans at all. Digital marketing agents. In fact, the AIs, chatbots, we don't need humans. And you might go, yeah, cool idea. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, let's do it. Then I would say like, okay, so Wesley, you would actually be doing me a service and helping me if you were to maybe try to find the holes in why I should go that way and maybe give me some pushback. Kind of need a devil's advocate right now. Just somebody to push back against some of my harebrained stuff. Sometimes I get a little bit. And when I kind of make it light and it's personal and I'm asking you to push back on me, challenge me, tell me where I'm wrong, tell me where I'm crazy, but have that conversation and just know that at the end of it, we're going to high five and we're going to go back to doing what we're doing. And we're probably going to be a little better for that conversation. Ideas and action plans are two different things. So sometimes one thing I can do is just like, I want to float an idea. It's not an action plan, not trying to implement it right now. I just kind of want to flush it out. So I need you to pick it apart as I go. Cool with that? And when they're like, yeah, let's go. And most of my team now will do that. And I have people bringing stuff up probably. Some team members will surface things and push back on me often. Like, hey, you launched this thing. I don't like it. Okay. Tell me why. And then we'll have a conversation. And that's the environment that I want, not them sitting over there just not liking it and being afraid to talk to me about it.
You basically ask them the question up front, right? Like, what do you not like about it?
Yeah. And I tell them that I expect them to push back on me. And that helps relieve that yes man culture.
Like that.
You're right. Like there's a lot of leaders out there who they feel so authoritative. They're so knowledgeable. They're so, and they have that high D, right? They've got the authority, they've got the energy, they've got the charisma. They've convinced themselves that what they're doing is the absolute coolest thing in the world and everybody should just buy in. And a lot of visionaries don't take the feedback and the pushback well, but it's what they need. They need to hear, entrepreneurs, founders, visionaries, they need to hear that they just had 10 brilliant ideas. 5 of them were bad ideas. 3 of them someday, maybe. 1 of them's a really good idea, but it's not the best timing. And 1 of those 10 ideas is really great. Let's figure out how to pound that to the ground and make it work. And when you have a visionary that can take that feedback and not feel like, nope, this is my company, I'm in charge, I'm doing it my way, you're going to do what I tell you to do. If that's the relationship that I'm in, and I operate pretty much as the integrator, if I'm in that relationship, it's probably not a good relationship. I'm probably going to exit it. But if we have the conversation where I can take that to my visionary and he's like, okay, all right, so the 1 idea is really good. Yeah, cool. Got 1 out of 10. Let's go.
I like that. I think it's kind of natural for a founder to be a visionary, right? Like your job is to have 10 ideas every single day, every single week.
Right.
But you just got to need somebody to tell you and integrate it, right? To tell you like, hey, like, no, we need to stay on track because these maybe 7 ideas are just not going to help you move the needle, like not going to help us move the needle, right? We need to focus on the 1 or 2 that actually make the difference.
Yeah. And that large volume of brilliant ideas. These guys are so smart. They're amazing in that they're momentum builders. They're forceful momentum builders. And odds are the business would never take off without. So you have to have that at some point. Like they have to be involved. They have to be coming up with those ideas. But they have to be able to take that feedback as well and be not creating more operational chaos. That was that phrase that I used earlier, right? Like you get the visionary. If the visionary has the ability to go out and just like, hey, I want to start a new program and we're going to start a new niche. We're going to start a new campaign. And we're going to do these things. And you get all these people doing these things and nobody sees them through and sees them executed well, then you just wasted enormous parts of your team's time. Yeah. And you've stalled your progress. Yeah. So when you can stay laser focused, what you focus on expands, right? And we don't need to necessarily be taught a lot of new things all the time. Sometimes we need to be reminded of the things we know, right? We know, probably everybody that's watching this knows a ton of the things that you and I have talked about. But sometimes in the mix of the day to day, they forget, and then they forget for a second day. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, shoot, I know better. Noticing that visionary energy and giving it a channel to be implemented is a great path. But there does come a time where the visionary needs to withdraw more and then just meet with your integrator or CO like once every couple of weeks or once a month. And you talk through the vision, the culture, the big things that are important to them. And you free that founder up to go, pursue and not have to do everything and not have to be the superhero that puts out every single fire.
Yeah, I like that. I want to talk a little bit about scaling and retention. When you joined Fanit, how many team members did you have and where are you guys right now?
Gosh, it was definitely less. I want to say we probably had somewhere between 12 and 15 team members, maybe 18. Now we're in the 30s.
So almost double, I would say. When you scale, I guess, from 15 to a bit over 30 people, what are some part of the cultures that change?
Parts of the culture that have changed. I think it's been, in some ways, it's more of a challenge because you have more touch points. So you have to make sure that you have layers to keep the relationships intact.
Yeah.
And the challenge has been, making sure that everybody has that same feeling. But in a lot of ways, it's easier because when you have a whole bunch of people talking about the culture points, then the conversation is easier to be a part of. And when you talk about things, again, what we focus on expands, right? So if we're talking about like our core values and how we're calling it out everybody, we have a little bot that I ask our IT systems to create. It just sends a message every Friday. And it rotates between messages on like, hey, call out somebody who really displayed our core values. And each one would be a separate core value, right? So tell me somebody who really displayed like leadership or excellence and expertise. Like they just really proved they know their stuff and they lived up to it and everybody saw it. And then call it out. We celebrate. And it's awesome to see like the team like, hey, I wanted to call out Wesley in a Slack channel. He did such a great job with this. And yeah, Sarah went and she stepped at the bat and she took care of this problem that wasn't even her problem. And when the people start celebrating those things and the conversation happens, the more voices you have in that conversation, the easier it is to promote that culture and continue to see it kind of thrive a bit.
Has anyone ever kind of like, man, like you put me on the spot. I don't know how to react. Come on, like the shy.
Just don't answer. Yeah. Every once in a while, there's just like, I don't know, man. It was a rough week. We had some fires burning and I didn't, but then what I'll ask the people is, okay, so you had fires burning. Who was there with a bucket of water? They might not have solved the whole thing, but who was part of solving it? And then when people are like, oh yeah, Dinesh and Natasha, they solved it. Like they were, yeah. Okay. So maybe let them know that you appreciate their work. And then people will do that. And they're like, yeah, I should. Yeah, you should. And then it just continues. So in a lot of ways, it's getting easier. But what you amplify always reveals things, right? Scaling, it reveals the cracks. So if you add people, it's very possible that you're going to reveal the culture gaps, right? And then the important thing is to close them, right? To acknowledge those gaps, identify them, figure out a clean path forward to solving it or improving it, and then implementing it. And that whole amplification starts and it reveals the good, the bad, and the ugly and everything in between. So as long as it's okay to take a moment and celebrate the wins. It's like, hey, like when we got the award from Agency Workplaces for exceptional, we took a minute. I mean, we were really humbled and honored and like, there's a lot of like feels in that, but that our team views us that way. And they view and they share the vision and they understand why we do what we do. And now we know that. And it wasn't us asking them and it wasn't yes man answers. It was a third party getting that information. And we took a minute to high five and celebrate that a little bit and like, okay, how can we take it further? How can we take it further? How can we absolutely just blow everybody's mind? And that is something, that's on our rock path for 2026 is like, how can we take an exceptional culture and make it even better? How can we one up ourselves?
I want to highlight one thing that you said that was very interesting. So I'm going to go back a little bit and you mentioned that like you actually nudge a team member to give a shout out to somebody else, right? Somebody who helped them during that week. I think what most people do is they would say something like, "Hey, team, go give a shout out to, somebody that you like this week." But no one take that extra mile and be like, "Hey, who helped you this week? Oh, maybe you should have given them like a little shout out, right?" I really like that.
Yeah. When we first started, I didn't have to nudge much. I have had probably less than 3 conversations with team members that actually I was pushing for it. When we first started the bot, it doesn't come through as me talking or anybody in leadership. It just comes through as the fan agent. And
Yeah.
it puts a little thing in and is like, hey, team, thinking about this past week, who would you say did a great job exemplifying this? And so for the first couple weeks, it was leadership, right? And so I would go in and I'd be like, hey, I saw Sarah do this and I saw TJ do this and, really excited and grateful for them, in their work. And then I made sure that Keith and Tony also knew. Keith would go in, do some emojis and, put it like we'd put some just fun things in. And then every once in a while to get traction in the first couple of weeks, I might say like in a call, like, hey, I remember that problem you were having with the one client earlier this week. How'd that go? Oh, yeah, we got it solved. Oh, sweet. How'd that work out? Oh, well, I got together with Sarah and we talked through it. Oh, so she would actually, so you mean she stepped forward? That kind of seems like that's a core value thing. And they're like, yeah, well, I should put that in the Slack channel. Great idea. Great idea. And then they do it. And so now every once in a while it gets a little dip where everybody's having a rough week and, energy's low or something like that. And everybody's just ready that it's Friday. And I'll have to go in and give a little nudge. But almost every week now, I'll comment, I won't be the first. There's other conversations and shout outs going on. So I find that it's, really kind of uplifting and positive and everybody feels appreciated when they get and that little kind of dopamine hit. Like I did step up and it's recognized and called out in public. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I know earlier you mentioned that if someone is not in the right role and they eventually find a different path, that's totally okay as long as they grow. If they come to that realization, that's a win. That sounds healthy, but have you ever had a situation where you just pour all your effort and energy into somebody and then just watch them leave?
Yes. Yeah. And it was hard. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There was a team member that we had that had been in Fanet longer than I have. He had been around for a while. A lot of institutional knowledge, really sharp operator, really great guy, knew a lot. And he went into a different role. And that happened before I even got into the place where I was leading him. So he was in this role and then I kind of move into leadership and I'm trying to coach with him. I'm trying to work with him. And I'm putting a lot of effort into this person and supporting him. Well, he had some life issues that happened that required some time off, family health and, just very serious things. And we supported him, I believe in my heart, way beyond what a normal business would support somebody, like months off, still getting comp. I'm taking his workload, covering those things. I'm calling and texting him every other day, like how are things like, and it wasn't because that I was trying to gain anything. I just wanted to know and wanted to be part of it and be some support for him. And I put all of that in. And then after it all drew to a close and there was there was some grieving time and all that, supported that. And then he came back to work and less than 2 weeks later, he put in his notice. And it made me think that, gosh, all that time that you were taking off, were you actually with your family, like grieving, or were you like plotting in your next course of action? And I confess, like my first thoughts were like, doggone it. Like I kind of feel played. I put all this into it and that's frustrating and hurtful. On the other side of the coin, the big boy part of me, that person now has his own agency that he's running and he's seen some success and everything that he learned with us positioned him to move forward in this way. Now, if he was thinking that he wants to be an entrepreneur and he wants to go out and be the force momentum builder and create his own thing, it was a matter of time anyways. It was going to happen. So was I a part of giving him the skills necessary to be successful at that? I think so. I mean, he was with us a while. We taught him some stuff that he didn't know. So in that point, like again, we positioned him to go a different direction and be successful and in a way that he feels fulfilled. He gets to be the founder. He feels like he's on his path and his mission. It happens more often than not. That was probably the one that stung because it was like the earliest one. And I felt like I went as far as a human could go to support him. Even so, it was the right move for him. And I support his decision there to chase that dream and be part of that. And I'm glad that I was able to help him somehow become better equipped to do it.
Do you try to avoid that kind of entrepreneurs in your team? Not like when you hire somebody, do you look for the traits like, hey, are you just trying to come in and learn about how we operate and then do your own thing later? Do you trying to avoid?
Nope. I want operators and leaders around me. I am not the best person in the room at any given point in time, and I never want to be. The only thing I want to be best at is keeping the people all informed on the mission and direction. We treat this place like a springboard, not a cage. And I think that's really important. High performers typically don't need babysitting, but they do need clarity and they need some, ownership conversations. They need clear scorecards, direct feedback, all those things. People leave. It's rarely about money and it's usually misalignment, right? Just with the direction that they're trying to go in and their career path, their long-term path. Are we part of it? And most departures are usually just alignment decisions. They're not usually emotional ones. And I just have to think like, if I've invested in somebody and I watched them leave, and I absolutely have, and sometimes it can sting, especially when you've mentored them and you poured a lot into them. But I would rather build leaders than try to build lifers. And that's, I think, a part of our culture. And that's, how we approach that development, that personal development path.
Like a lot of things you share today. I'm curious. Was it like event happened when you were younger that kind of shaped like your views being a leader that you are now?
If there was a specific event, I think I've had the good fortune to have good leaders around me at various key points in my life. And I think some of it wasn't, I picked up maybe just by association, just by osmosis, just by being there with them and hearing them talk. But yeah, I don't know that it's a necessarily event. I think it was just kind of shaped in my character and personality and how we value people. I think I have seen enough industries and businesses go through just the machine of churning people in and out. And I don't like it. I understand that some businesses, that's just the way they operate. And you have to accept that that's how it is when you walk in there. When you sign that agreement and you agree to play on that field, that's the deal. And if you know that and you're okay with it, then okay, you accept it. For me and the business and the leadership, the leader that I want to be, that I aspire to be, that I'm trying to build and the culture that I'm trying to build is more about personal growth and development and seeing people become what they imagine themselves being and what they're driving towards. If I could be part of supporting that, that's what I need my eulogy to be, is that, there was a guy that supported us in our growth and our patterns and helped us get the tools and the skill sets to achieve them.
Yeah, like that.
Pretty much
funny enough. It's funny. A lot of good leaders actually became good leaders because they've seen a lot of bad leaders around. Or they work maybe for like a bad managers and they're just like, oh, that's all the traits that they see in a bad leader. So what I'm going to do is the opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a little bit of truth to that. Everybody has those experiences. You can't you can't live a life and a career, and especially be at my age, where you haven't run into a couple, just people that should not be a leader. They might be a boss, but they are not a leader. And so you come across them. But I think for me, I'm really fortunate in that I've just had really good people around me for a lot of my life, and people that I could learn from and grow from and have some of these conversations that I now have with my team. So it's really positioned me to I like to consume a lot. I read a lot about these things and, just try to be as informed and educated and intentional as I can.
Any book that you want to shout out for when it comes to you building like leadership trait?
Well, I think the traction's a great one for EOS because it talks about accountability. I think the
Mhm.
one is a great one for identifying the people that you want on your team. That's a great book as well. And yeah, I think the one is probably the one that I would lean to more for people.
Yeah, traction. Very, very. I tell people to read that all the time if they get
Oh,
into
it's great.
leadership or just like
Yeah.
being an entrepreneur in general. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Traction and Good to Great are two of my rereads. Another one that's actually really great. I've read the Laws of Leadership and all that, but there's one by Keith Cunningham called The Road Less Stupid, and it's funny the title. I find the title funny, but it is one of my favorite business reads. If I was going to shout one out, like that's one of my favorites. Is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Great book.
awesome. I'll check it out. Now, I love to wrap up the interview with one last question. And I ask this
Sure.
to every single guest.
Okay.
If you had to restart today and rebuild an entire agency from scratch, what is the one single mistake that you would not allow yourself to repeat?
Structure. And so to dive into that just a little bit, I would install structure sooner. Less free flow at the beginning, having our accountability charts earlier, the role clarity earlier, scorecards implemented by role and implemented. We can have our culture. Culture without clarity can turn into chaos. And so it's my belief that structure creates freedom and, having clean, identifiable anything, any clarity at all, that beats comfort. And it is the most sincere form of kindness and caring that I can possibly provide. So making sure that that was installed really fully, very early, that having those standards actually is what protects our culture.
Well, everyone, this is your guest, Chris Fink, and this is the Agency Culture Conversations. Thank you, Chris, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.